That's not the best audio, I'm afraid, but we'll muddle through here. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 10:04 a.m. Everybody, please mute your microphones when you're not speaking and only turn them on when you speak. Stay on camera during the meeting for quorum purposes for all of you that are members of the board. And each time you speak, please announce your name. This is being recorded, and we need to have the names. And Kelly, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Ms. Knight, can you turn your camera on, please? Okay, we need you to stay on camera, ma'am, and also turn your microphone on when I call your name.
Oh,
Jody Knight,
yes.
Kathy Ann Riley,
Here.
Rob Roy Parnell, Michael Olson,
Here.
Ron Menard,
Here.
Michael McDonald,
And Kelly, can you?
Mr. McDonald, I see you. Okay. And John Ricard, presiding officer.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Did you catch me, Rob Roy Parnell? I'm driving, so do I have to have my camera on?
Well, we prefer if you to stop somewhere, sir, but yes, I see your name on the screen now, so
Yeah.
I'll mark you here.
Yeah, Mr.
All right.
Parnell, thank you. Please safety first.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's some issues that have come up where I'm having to address. So I'm doing this via driving. So.
And we
Sorry.
also have another member, Mr. Olson. He is in the car. Sorry, in the car. And we appreciate him as well. He had to pull over into a church parking lot. So, okay, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Mary Beth.
So we do have a quorum.
Okay, I'll call your attention to we have a quorum, so we'll call your attention to the minutes for last time. Please take a look at those and let me know if there are any comments or changes. And if you've had a chance to glance at those, I would be prepared to accept a motion in a second to approve the minutes.
Mike Olson, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes as is. Do I have a second?
Kathy Riley, second.
Thank you, Kathy. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. Those in, Dahlia, would you call the roll for that, please?
Yes, sir. Jody Knight,
Yes.
Kathy Ann Riley,
Approve.
Rob Roy Parnell,
Yes.
Michael Olson,
Yes.
Ronald Menard,
Yes.
Michael McDonald, and John Ricard, presiding officer.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is public comment. The Architectural Various Advisory Committee did not receive public comments for this meeting. So we'll move on to item E, staff reports. Chloe, I believe you're up first.
Good morning, presiding officer Renaud Ricard and board members. My name is Chloe Whalen, Licensing Division. We have had some organizational changes in the licensing division. And with that being said, I have been reassigned to a different position. The young lady that you see on the screen today, Ms. Yvonne Lopez, is going to be the new manager that's taking over for the Registered Accessibility Specialist licensing. So I am going to stop speaking for the moment and let Yvonne introduce herself to you.
Thank you, Chloe. Good morning, members. My name is Yvonne Lopez. As Chloe mentioned, I am the licensing manager assigned to this statute. I have 25 total years of state service and 14 of those years have been with TDLR. I am familiar with this program, so I feel like I've come full circle. I attended the RAS Academy when I first started here. I was assigned to EAB when I began in enforcement, and I was over that program, or not over the program, but I did notices of alleged violation and things of that nature for about 5 years when inspections were overdue. And then I was also assigned EAB again for about a year in my time with RPM. So I'm happy to be here and I look forward to working with you all. And I'll take any questions if you have anything for me.
Committee, I
Welcome back,
want to
Yvonne.
add that apparently we all started as children at TDLR and with these programs. And we will wish Chloe the best. We'll see her on other things and welcome Yvonne.
So as you can see, you will be in great, capable hands as I pass the baton over to Yvonne. So I will do this report, and going forward, the beautiful ray of sunshine of Miss Yvonne will continue with the reports for your next meeting. So for registered accessibility specialists for fiscal year 2023, we have renewed 12 new licenses. New licenses were 12, renewed licenses was 169, and that total population right now is 542. That concludes that short report. And if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer questions that you have.
Thank you. And just to be clear, though, 169 renewed licenses is year to date, right? And that
Yes,
will
sir.
continue.
That is correct.
Thanks, Chloe and Yvonne. Not seeing any more comments from anybody or hands raised. The next report is for Education Examination Division. Michael?
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Michael Strawn. I'm a manager for the Education Examination Division. Here to give you our statistics this morning. As you kind of saw with the licensing report, we've had the first quarter of 2023, we've had almost half as many examinations provided as we did all of last year. So quarter one was very strong for us. Q2, we should have numbers for you all on that by the next advisory board. So we saw a slight increase there. And if we jump down to course approvals, we will see that the course approvals that were issued for fiscal year 23, we were a little bit under what we saw Q1 from last year. But as far as Q2, as far as course approvals go, we've seen an increase there. So it looks to be right on track with what we've seen in previous years for our statistics. With that being said, those are all of my statistics, and I'm here to answer any questions you all might have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, anybody? All right, let's move to Customer Service Division. Ara?
Good morning, board members and TDLR staff. These are our statistics reports for the Architectural Barriers Advisory. I'm sorry, let me restart. My name is Myra Rodriguez. I am one of the managers in customer service overseeing this program. These are our statistics for the AB inquiries that we receive here in customer service. I am available for any questions that you may have, or if you need further interpretation on the report.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions or comments? All right, not seeing any. Enforcement Division, Rachel.
Hello, my name is Rachel Sation. I'm a prosecutor in the Enforcement Division presenting our report. As you can see, we had a lot of great movement with some promotions and new hires during the report covers fiscal year 2022 in its entirety and fiscal year 2023 through December 2022. So let's jump straight into the statistics because I think that's what you'll be most interested in. And these are performance measures that tell legislature how we're doing. And as I mentioned, it covers 2023 through December of 2022. And in that time period, we received 770 EAB complaints and opened 722 of those. We closed a total of 162 cases. For fiscal year 2022, that was 243 cases with 209 of them closed. The average time that we achieved resolution was 103 days, with nearly 84% of them closing within 6 months. That was for 2023. In 2022, it was about 62% within 6 months. Of those closed cases for fiscal year 2023, 8 of them resulted in disciplinary action, and that is compared with 2022 with almost 14% of them. At the end of December 2022, we had 693 cases pending. The source of most of those cases for 2023 is 2.77% was only 2.77% were consumer-based reports, compared to most of them coming from within TDLR. Compared with fiscal year 2022, where we had 30% of the cases were originating with consumer complaints. Next, we have case outcomes. We have the case outcomes divided into the different types of orders that we have in the program. As you can see, there were no commission orders and 1 default, 12 signed agreed orders, and 140 cases we were able to resolve informally. This is for 2023. For 2022, we had no commission orders, 6 defaults, 26 agreed, and 177 cases that we were able to resolve informally. For both 2023 and 2022, our #1 top violation was the owner's failure to not have the project inspected for the final inspection. And that's also the #1 disciplinary action taken. If you scroll down, you can see that of the disciplinary actions taken for 2023, that's again the most common disciplinary action. And then we can scroll all the way down to our case highlights that I pulled out for you. The first one is Red River Decker Hills, LLC. We had agreed order in that case that finalized our settlement agreement. And it was actually for 2 cases, so we were able to clear up both of those, and where Red River accepted our determination that they had some violations in the law in getting that final inspection that I told you was our #1 source of violations, or sorry, not source of violation, but our #1 violation in 2 separate projects. So they paid an administrative penalty for both of those cases, $750, and that's been paid in full. The next one is Abril Para, a registered accessibility specialist. We had an agreed order, again, finalizing our settlement agreement there. She failed to comply with RAS procedure, so she was assessed a penalty of $1,000, and she's also paid her fine in full. The next one is Michael Shimmer. A default order was entered in this one, signed by Deputy Director David Gonzalez, and he failed to, again, complete the work and refund the money. And because he didn't return his settlement agreement, a default order was against him, and part of that fine has been paid so far. The next one is Pop Holdings LP, another default order. They failed to register their project, and they failed to timely sign and return their settlement agreement, so a default order was against it. A penalty of $2,000 was ordered, and it's in the collection process. The final case I have for you is a default order against Michael Ray, a registered accessibility specialist. He also failed to comply with RAS procedure by not timely submitting his project files. He was assessed a penalty of $2,000 as well as a 6-month probation on his license. That ends the enforcement report, and I'm available to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Any questions? All right. Moving on, regulatory program management update, Marcia.
Good morning, everyone. Marcia Godo, Program Supervisor for the RPM EAB program. I'll just go over our report real quick. So we've had a couple of personnel updates. Mr. Norman Kiki retired since our last meeting, and we hired Jonathan Sparks and Jenna Harris as Program Specialist 1s to replace him. Yes, it took 2 people to replace Norman. Mr. Stuart Strenard was our our section manager. He retired and was replaced by Miss Delisa Hamilton from our enforcement department. And then T. Huynh left to go and join our IT department here at TDLR. So we are a man down currently. As far as our statistics, we have just over 2,000 projects registered a month online through our tab system. Just over 1,500 emails answered through our Tech Info email a month, as well as around 1,000 notices a month that go out for either inspection overdue, plan review overdue, or corrections overdue. I will be discussing after our staff reports the 2023 tasks and the status of that. And as far as our outreach, we have been hosted by the Building Professional Institute as well as the Accessibility Professionals Association to teach the Academy several times in the past 2 fiscal years. These opportunities have almost equaled out to what we were pre-COVID, so we don't foresee us TDLR hosting academies in the near future because it seems to be working well with other groups hosting for us, and we just go and teach. We do have a new program that we've started, our very baby steps of the program, where we're teaching local municipalities, particularly the smaller ones, about the tasks and the rules and regulations. So we are starting that, and hopefully we'll get that off the ground in the next year or so. Do I have any questions?
Not hearing any questions. Thank you, Marcia. Let's move on to executive office. Mary?
Good morning, everyone. I knew that. I was searching for my mouse connection. Thank you, everyone, for being patient. We've had just a couple of technical difficulties this morning, but we are rocking and rolling. Currently, we are in the 88th legislative session. It began about January 10th, I believe. And I did not check with Jeff Copas, who is just our group guru of keeping up with the number of bills filed. But I know that we have several bills filed just overall for the state of Texas. And TDLR is following probably several hundred at this time. Those bills relating to each of our programs, we have listed on our website. And so if you have any questions, they're not just the bills with bill numbers, they all do have links, but for any program that affects TDLR, they have them under a bolded subheading so you can check out anything. We're not currently seeing anything specifically for architectural barriers at this time, but they're not finished filing. And any other ones or occupations that you have a question about, they are on the website. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. So far, our executive staff has had an opportunity to present budget requests to both the House and the Senate. Executive Director Mike Harris Mendez and Brandy Corrales, our Chief Financial Officer, presented to both the Senate Finance Committee as well as the House Appropriations Committee, and made special requests concerning, of course, we're wanting to get a licensing system that is cohesive and that handles all of the different programs. That would be just an economy of efforts if we can get that. And we have several exceptional items that we are seeking. The legislature has also on tap for staff who work so diligently, raises that they're on the table for next year and the next year to meet the rising cost of inflation and just what it takes to live right now. So we much appreciate that as well. The communication outreach statistics. For the past 6 months, the program has had about 1,280 views per day, which is quite a bit. But considering this happens, or this occupation really relates to so many things across Texas and its accessibility, it's not really shocking. Most of those are accessed by desktop computer with a few by smartphone. The top reasons for visiting the site are the 2012 Texas Accessibility Standards, the TAS online, forms, frequently asked questions, disabled parking placards, and laws and rules. This sample is how we understand how folks are reaching out to TDLR, if what we have listed is effective, or if it's answering any questions. And our guys in the back, thank you so much who handle these things, Josh, and update this continually, and Mr. Fickle, who's our webmaster. He keeps this in check for us to make sure that we are giving the public and our licensees the information that they need. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any. Item F on the agenda is an update regarding the proposed revision to the Texas accessibility standards. Marcia?
And I'm back. Okay, so as far as the 2023 TAS update, the last time we met, we were posting them online so that we could get public comment. We received over 400 public comments regarding our proposal. So we spent some time going through that one by each comment. We have met a couple of times with our work group as well as stakeholder groups. Currently, we're still researching some of the matters. We're planning on meeting again with the work group and the stakeholder groups to go over some of the big ticket items, such as the reference standards and how we want to go and put that into the 2023 TAS. But hopefully by the end of this calendar year, that's the goal, that we will be able to go and move forward with that. Do I have any questions about the 2023 TAS?
Kathy, I saw your lips move, but you may be muted. I don't know. You want to make a comment?
No comments for me. I'm just trying to look at everything at the same time.
Okay, anybody else comment? All right, let's move on. Thank you, Marcia. We'll move on to item G, which is the bulk of, I think, our discussion today. This is discussion and possible recommendation on proposed amendments to the existing rules. And the way we're going to work through this is Jessica Escobar will present this, and then we'll have time for questions and comments. Then we'll hold the motion until we have a chance to work through some of our comments, and then we'll look for to have a motion and vote with some additional discussion if needed at that time. So Jessica, let me just turn over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Jessica Escobar, Chief of Staff at TDLR. I want to start with some preliminaries this morning. So first of all, thank you all members for being here this morning. We've got a not small rule package to discuss this morning. So we've got our work ahead of us, and I appreciate you all being here to do that. So before we get started, I want to explain what we're doing and explain the process. So we went through rule review last year, and as you know, rule review is a 4-year process, and we take a look at the rules and we ask whether the rules still have a need to be in place. After that, we take a look and then we start reviewing and see what can be changed, how can we make them better, are rules still needed? So from that, we went through, we worked closely with staff, we worked with our work group, and this is the product that you got. Part of it was streamlining, making the rules easier to read and find. So one of the first things you'll see is that there's now subchapters. So they're more organized, and kind of flow a little bit. So you'll see there's subchapter A, you're going to see subchapter B, so that there's kind of a thoughtful process to where you'll have general, you're going to have all of your registration requirements, all of your owner requirements, so that you can find everything. And when you're looking for something, you know where it is. And they're broken out a little bit easier, so you don't have everything convoluted into one role. So that's one of the things that we started with. Another thing I will say is that we moved the RAS procedures from outside and as a procedural document outside of there into the rules. And so again, trying to make it easier so that you're not tracking through multiple documents and you can find them easily in the rules. They were enforceable as procedures. They're enforceable now here in the rules, but they're available for everybody to find them, and you're not having to find them through the website. So starting there, next steps. So we're going to go through these rules. I'm going to go through high level, like Mr. Ricard said. We'll go through, and then from there we can stop and have a discussion afterwards. Or if there's something major that you want to stop me and we can discuss, we can do that. My plan is to go subchapter by subchapter. And you might have changes or suggestions, or you might want to stop and say, okay, this is not what I anticipated, and you're able to make changes. This is our first advisory board meeting to address these. They have not been published yet. So this is the meeting where you all are going to say, okay, as a board, we are okay with this proposal, or we are okay with this proposal with these changes to the proposed rules. And then at that time, we will send these to the Texas Register, and then there's a 30-day comment period. And so everybody has the opportunity to provide their comments to us about the rules. So the way it's presented now doesn't mean that's the way it has to go. So if you have suggestions, if there's a typo, if there's a word missing, or if there's a rule that you don't want to move, we have the opportunity to change that today, and then we can move the proposal forward. So you've got the 30-day comment period. After we get those comments in, if there's any substantive change, if there's anything else that we need to do, we will do that. And then from there, you'll get copies of those comments. You'll get a copy of any revisions that we make. They come back to you all on the second board meeting. So at that second board meeting, you'll say, okay, we are good with these changes. Or again, you have the opportunity to say, let's make a tweak based on this comment. And then from there, that's when they'll go to the commission for adoption. So we have lots of opportunities for public comment. You all have the opportunity to review these and provide your input. These are your rules as a board. So I just wanted to preface our discussion with that, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So that way, if you have any questions along the way with the process, hopefully this addressed those. So if you're ready, or I guess I'll allow anybody to some time to ask any other questions. All right. Well, if not, then I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. All right. Can everybody see my Adobe Acrobat screen? Good? All right.
Yes.
Okay. So it's pretty big, so we can't see a lot at once, but we'll kind of go high level. So I'm not going to go item by item as far as what has changed, but go high level because there are a significant amount of changes, and there's 20 pages of rules. So I want to respect everybody's time. So you'll notice that some of them, there were no changes, and so that's noted so you're aware of that. The initial changes, we have a subchapter A. A lot of these are aligned to some of our other programs, and this is just a general provision. So you can find all the basics. Our authority is still there. We've got our definitions. This is just a cleanup. There is the chapter 469 is not titled Texas Architectural Barriers Act. Just clean that up. So you'll see that some words, some definitions were omitted. That's because they're plain language definitions, and either they were not used readily throughout the chapter, or it's plain language, and so we removed those. Completion of construction was a definition that we brought forward at the request of our enforcement division. So we tried to clarify and make this one a little bit easier to read. This is one that we can certainly discuss. Contract provider is something that's no longer, it's not a licensed individual. It's not something we regulate. So that was omitted. And of course, you can see we renumbered everything. Days, just to clarify that a day is a calendar day. Of course, there's the option for business day. There's variables. So we're trying to make clear your day is a calendar day. Department is TDLR, another standardized across the board with our other programs. Owner is changed to read person, person who has title to your building or facility that's subject to. What is a person? So person, again, this is standardizing with our other programs. Person, this is a definition that's taken from the Business and Commerce Code. A person is an individual, which is a human person, you and me. Can be a corporation, a partnership, a business. So that's the bottom line. A person is global. That's what a person is. It can be more than one person. So rather than saying an individual or a company or anything, that's why we say person, because it captures many people. Your project file, we're just clarifying this is what the project file is. Public entity, again, clarifying to clean up this definition. Registered building, again, cleaning up. And I don't see any hands, so if you have anything, please interrupt me. Again, these are all cleanup and just clarification. So some of the definition, some of these rules already exist. A lot of these do already exist, but you'll see them presented as new because they've moved from a different section and now here they are. So 68.11 is taken from 68.100. It's moved here because this is the logical place for it. So rather than staying at the end, the standards and technical memos saying this is what we've adopted fits under general provisions, something you'd see in our other programs. Forms, we added this rule. So this is just to say, okay, these are the standards we feel should exist for forms. This is one that was added. What we were seeing is some alterations of forms. And so we wanted to make clear, if you're submitting something, we want to make sure it's on a prescribed form by the department. And so this helps us also to make sure we don't have any missing information and we can process things more quickly. So on to registration requirements. Again, this is generally all a cleanup here. We did have a couple of things. You'll see that all of places of lodging, we didn't get rid of this. This is a cleanup. But when you have a significant amount of edits, the easiest thing is to repeal the section and adopt it as new. So you'll see places of lodging is right here, and those requirements remain. And again, this is all cleanup here, just for readability and saying, you know, sports or entertainment venue, and also modernization. So motion picture house, it's a little antiquated. So a lot of these are updated. Same thing, retail establishment. So these are new, and the reason why is these have come up recently. So you've got the residential amenity space and the pedestrian route. We can certainly talk about those later. This is cleanup, of course, commercial facility and building or facility, just cleaning up. We try to do things in a singular versus the plural. This section was moved to a different section, and that's why it's being repealed. So 6821, what we realized is there is no section that really prescribes that you should register your project. So this is a new section saying, hey, you have to register your project, or if you've got a state lease, you've got to register that. So this makes it clear to anybody who's reading the rules, this is your requirement, and this is how you do it. Again, standardizing it with other programs, telling the reader, this is what I need to do to meet those requirements. Submit your form, submit a fee. So this is aligning with some of our other rules. Same thing with state leases. These are requirements for a state lease. This is what was taken from 6820. If you are less than 50,000 or you're not subject to the act, then you have the option to register, or you have the option to have it reviewed or inspected. So we want to make clear you can do it, but you don't have to do it. State leases. This is a section that was moved. It is not a new section. It existed before. It exists exactly the same. It's just moved from here. Your registration requirement was moved up there and clarified. So nothing was changed as to Section B, which is the meat of state leases. We just moved it because it's more logical in this section. So your exemptions, nothing has changed here, only to add that place of primary residence, which is essentially like your Airbnb, so a place that doesn't have more than 5 rooms. Variance procedures. So I explained to you earlier, when you have a significant number of edits, it's easier to just repeal it in its entirety and adopt as new. We didn't change anything here. What we did is we reformatted it so that it's easier to read. So that's the only reason we did a repeal and an adopt as new. The requirements didn't change. We didn't make it more burdensome. We didn't take anything away. All we did is rewrite it so that you can see what is actually required. So it's in a much cleaner and easier to read manner. So that's all that we did in this section and why it appears as new. So this is a new chapter, owner responsibilities. One thing that we did hear from our feedback through the work group and through our meetings and as well with staff was the RAS has responsibilities. However, there's nothing in rule that corresponds with the owner. So the owner has to register and then the responsibilities go away. And so that was creating some lag and some issues. So we clarified what the owner is responsible for. So they, of course, have to register. They have to tell us when there's any changes, when they have to be reporting. And so a lot of these are repetitive to other things throughout the chapter, but we want to make very clear that owner may not read a single rule throughout the rest of the chapter, but they are fully aware of their responsibilities that they have to meet for the EAB program. Same thing, inspection required. They have to have their inspection completed. Designated agent. So this was previously only a definition. We were getting a lot of questions about this. We have a form, owner agent designation form, and there was a lot of confusion about this. So we decided to build this out as a whole rule in hopes that this clarifies a lot of the issues, a lot of the questions to address that, the designation of an agent. So that's where you're seeing that rule. Okay, so new subchapter, construction documents, plan reviews, everything that we've already got there. Again, this is another one where we're trying to clarify and clean up. This is redundant to this, so we just are trying to get away and clean things up. So less is more when you're reading rules. We want you to make sure that it's easy to read and anybody can understand. Again, this is kind of making sure that everything is easy to read. This section, construction documents become the property. That was taken from another section. We're just leaving it in there as or it was put in there just as a safety net, just threw in there from another section. 6851, again, this was repealed and created new as plan review requirements. Part of this is from the RAS procedures. So again, we brought some of those over to make clear, okay, you're not having to read in multiple documents. This is what you need when you're performing a plan review. All of the detailed requirements, and this is what you need as part of your plan review. So no new requirements, and I will restate that. We're not adding requirements here. They were already in the RAS or they're already in the rule. We were clarifying and making sure that they're easier to read and they're in one location. So for inspections, we've changed that now to inspections and corrective modifications. And you're seeing here now, this is the process for having that inspection. You've got to have your signature. I will say this is an oversight. We had this one is okay, we have another one. This was a discussion we had ongoing as far as having somebody present. This was something that's come up recently throughout the year as far as who has to be there during an inspection. And the bottom line that we're trying to clarify is as long as somebody representing the owner is there, that is satisfactory. It doesn't have to be the agent. It doesn't have to be the owner themselves. As long as they've got somebody representing them during the inspection, that's satisfactory. And then that person has to provide a signature. So that was the intent of that rule, to clarify that process. And then we've got here what has to be on that inspection report. And then again, with corrective modifications, this is clarifying what came from the RAS procedures. So this is saying what the owner must do. So after you get that, after they get their notice of corrective modifications required, they have to respond on this form that we're going to have there. And then they've got to make those corrective modifications and let us know by that 270th day. Again, this is taken from RAS procedures. And then those have to be, that response has to be uploaded by the RAS. That's the one in D1. So transmittal letter, this is something that's been taken from the RAS procedures, just outlining the process for those transmittal letters, what needs to be included in them. This section is, again, redundant, not necessary. It's in another section, so it was repealed. No changes to 6860. No changes to new subchapter E, which is your advisory committee, but we did create the subchapter. And now we have the RAS rule. So clarified, again, this is aligned with our other rules, just clarified, okay, this is your new registration rule. Or rather, I shouldn't say new, but this is your registration rule that outlines your qualifications and the application process. Again, we want to make sure that it's clear. If you're applying to be a RAS, this is what you need to do, and this is what you have to have in order to qualify. So clarifying, you can't do the work unless you're a certified RAS. To be certified, and this was already in the rule, you've got to meet one of the qualifications, still exists, pass an exam, and we clarified you've got to pass a criminal history background check. This is not new. This is something that already exists. Our licensees already go through a background check. So this is not a new requirement. It exists already. We have criminal conviction guidelines that already exist. And so those already happen and we already run those. And then you've got to submit the fee and tells you where to find the fee. So that's already there, but it is just transparent as to what you have to do in order to meet that certification requirement. So we also clarified, okay, these are the ways you do that. Submit your completed application, and you've got to submit your evidence that you've met those qualifications, that you're eligible to do that. We've also clarified that you've got 1 year to meet all of those requirements. Once you submit your application, you need to submit everything along with that application. Otherwise, it's no longer eligible. You have to resubmit. Renewal, same thing. We're repealing so that we can clarify again to align with our other rules. To renew, same process. Every application that has an individual and is subject to a criminal history background check goes through it at new and at renewal. And that's only for felonies. It doesn't include misdemeanors. And again, it goes back to the criminal history the criminal conviction guidelines established by the board or committee. Here, it says 8, but we're going to talk later about continuing education. Whatever ends up with, it'll align there. And a reminder, if you are expired, you cannot perform work. So going to continuing education, we repealed this one. This is a bigger change. And the reason for this is we talked with the work group. There's some background on this one. So currently, the way the rule is written, only approved course providers can provide 4 of the hours of the education. And then you've got 4 more hours that can be in a number of topics that you all self-certify to us, and you just mark off and say, I've got 4 hours, and you don't actually provide us any documentation. So this would reduce the total number of hours to 4 hours. It no longer has to be by an approved provider. What we were hearing from you all is there are a number of providers who are able to provide you continuing education that is very relevant to what you do that may not be approved by us. And so this gives you additional options to continue to expand your knowledge base, and they may be at different costs. And so this gives you options. However, you still need to meet some of the requirements to have those hours count. They, of course, still need to be related to the rules and laws, or they need to be related to accessibility things. So previously, that list of non-approved courses went through some other things like business practice and ethics, and those may not necessarily apply to your work related to accessibility. So that was changed, and the 4 hours was reduced. Many of you all also hold other licenses and meet additional continuing education requirements there. So this is a proposal. It is not a requirement, or it is not adopted by any means. You all have the opportunity to say, that's great, I want it increased, I want it back. And also you have the option to say, no, we want to go back to the approved providers, or just take it as it is. So what this would mean is on your application, you would just check the box and say, I certify that I've met those requirements. In the event that there was a request to review your continuing education and we wanted to look at that, you would need to be able to provide us proof that you completed your 4 hours. So if that went into effect, then it would not be until July 1, 2023. This is assuming that for renewals after that date. This is assuming that the rules go forward today. We continue on track for a second meeting, and the rules get adopted by the commission by June 1st. So that's the July 1 date, and certainly that can be changed as well. So responsibilities. This is one, again, we're trying to clarify, but also this one was worked on very closely with our enforcement division. It needs to have sufficient information that they're able to take action on. If the verbiage is not such that they can actually pursue a violation, it means nothing. So we worked with them very closely on what they could take action on. These right here are really the responsibilities of what they need to be doing, maintaining files, general things, right? And so you've got to, let me go back up. Maintain your project files, not a big deal. Upload any changes, provide changes of your contact information. And this is intended to be your contact information. We can clarify that. It's not intended to be of any of your clients. It's your contact information. If you move, if we need to find you and we cannot because you've moved, that's an issue for us. Standards of conduct, I apologize. This is what I was talking about with enforcement. So we wanted to clarify that this is what you need to have knowledge of. And compliance and other issues, we looked at, for example, the architecture board. We looked at other rules to see what those looked like. And so we wanted to make sure that they kind of aligned, see what their standards were. So for integrity, we cleaned this one up, and this is what we came up with. We want to make sure there's not any misrepresentations to clients. Looking at those coercion threats, things that we could take action on. Got rid of interest, and really it became conflict of interest. This is one that enforcement worked closely on and developed this language. And we feel like it also works closely to be able to protect you all so you know specifically what the definition of conflict of interest would be. And then right here for rules of conduct specifically, nothing changed. We did take out this rule for state seal. We don't have the authority to police it. That's for you all to work closely with the Secretary of State, so we took that one out. Shared services, this is in the RAS procedures. We just moved it over here to highlight if you're going to work with another RAS on sharing your services, these are the requirements. These did not change. Enforcement, again, clarifying, we removed contract providers. and then removing department employees for performing plan reviews and inspection services. And then in here, just clarifying that we're not going to copy records. They're all uploaded. And if we request those, we're asking that they be uploaded within 14 days. Or if it's obviously, if it's a really big request, you're going to work with our program folks and they may give you a different timeline. So that's it. That is a lot. I know we were going to go high level, but I want to make sure that you understand kind of some of the background, why we did those, and I am open to questions, thoughts, suggestions, and let me know where you'd like to start.
Thank you, Jessica. That was great. A little bit like going on a museum tour at a brisk trot, but it was wonderful. I think the pace was perfect for that. So I want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask any questions they have, and Jessica will move the screen to the correct page to look at those location ones as we go. I will certainly have a few questions to ask myself. I first want to open this up to the advisory committee and see what questions may be out there or comments or thoughts. There is a raise hand function feature at the bottom of your screen, so you can use that if you are not getting somebody to respond to you. And remember, each time you speak, please unmute your mic and say your name so we know who's talking in the recording. Comment.
Yes. John, Ron Menard
Yes.
here. Okay. I refer to subchapter D, section 68.50, submission of contract documents. It's on page 11. The way that the section is worded, it implies that a design professional is required for projects over $50,000 or more. Reading further on, I see that that was really not the intent, but the way that it's worded, that's what it says. It says that if the estimated construction cost is $50,000 or more, plans and specifications for the construction of or alteration to a building or facility subject to, et cetera, must be submitted by a design professional.
Okay.
Okay. And I've got a suggestion for that as to how to fix it. Okay, must be submitted by the design professional.
Right.
When one is present, along with et cetera. Okay, because that then ties in nicely with subpart B when a design professional is not on the project.
Okay. We can definitely make that change.
And I've got two other things that I noticed.
Got it. Which section?
Okay. On page 12, part D, a plan review or plan revision report.
Okay.
Part 2 should say registered accessibility specialist.
Yes.
The word specialist is missing. That shows up a couple of times.
Okay. I'll look for that.
That shows up on page 12. And on page 13.
Okay.
And on page 14.
Okay.
That's it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments? Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and start with some that I have, and if I say something that somebody triggers something in your mind about something else, or if you have a comment about that, I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for people to respond and take some side trips if we need to make sure that we get through this thoroughly. Can we start, please, at 68.10, number 5 on page 1?
Nope, I guess we were up there. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I apologize for the
Research
spelling.
do what you thought it would.
There we go.
Thank you. So you said that this change was made at the suggestion of enforcement, and I guess I'm asking if this has any implications for the RAS at all, because we don't know when the final payment is going to be made. It seems to me that this allows an owner to delay completion of construction indefinitely by simply delaying a small portion of the final payment of the contractor. But I want to kind of rethink this, make sure I understand what you're saying here, and make sure that we're all convinced this is going to work.
So I'll defer to Rachel, who's our enforcement prosecutor, and see if she can give you some insight to that one.
On this one, the problem was when we tied it to the issue of the certificate of occupancy, we had a lot of projects that were actually remodels. So it might have already had a certificate of occupancy, and it didn't give a final date for us to be able to figure out whether or not something has actually been done, whether a deadline has actually been passed. We didn't want to make it something that's overly subjective and burdensome to the owners, or to place too much responsibility on a RAS when it didn't need to go to the RAS at all. And this was honestly something that is typical in construction law and the best we could come up with. But if there's some issue with that, then that's something definitely we can take back to the drawing board. But we were trying to nail something down that could be a definite date that we could tie it back to as far as an enforcement action. Does that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good explanation.
Marcia Godo, I'd like to add that it is in the owner's responsibilities that in the subsection of owner's responsibilities that they provide any changes to that. So that does fall on the owner, not necessarily the RAS. Now, if the RAS is told about it, it's RAS's responsibility to make that change or update the system, but it does fall in the responsibilities of the owner to go and provide that information.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move down to number 21.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify, corporation means any individual working for the corporation, any authorized individual working for the corporation. I think we've had this discussion before where if an email comes from the corporation on the corporation's email address, that we can pretty much assume that that's coming from an authorized individual. If we wanted to make any clarifications, this is kind of the time to do it. So I just want to make sure that that's something we thought about and we're comfortable with.
So I think that would apply. I think we're talking about the designated agent. Is that specifically where we're looking at, or because corporate, that is the definition of corporation. Same thing with partnership. So I would hesitate to change the definition there, but we can, I guess, are you talking about during the registration process? Are you talking about designated agent? When specifically are you referring to?
So there are a couple of things. It could be the registration itself. It could be when somebody issues a request for inspection, for example.
Okay.
Or there are several times in there where the owner provides information in the estimated construction completion date, for example. And I just want to make sure that we're clear on who from the corporation that can come from. It might come from anybody, and our presumption is that that's an authorized individual, and it's not really up to the RAS, for example, to try to parse that. But I know there's been some questions about it in the past, so I know it's been thought about, and I just want to make sure everybody's clear that when we say corporation, we really mean any employee of the corporation.
We can incorporate that to the chapter. We'll put that in.
If you don't think it's necessary, I'm okay with that, but just if you think clarification would be appropriate, that would be great.
We can certainly, so it should be any and not necessarily just an authorized individual, correct?
Right, that's the question. Is it,
Yes.
Did you intend that to be authorized individual, or did you intend that to be any member of the corporation, employee of the corporation?
We did not. And so where we're talking about here related to person, it's that person is holding title and the corporation is the one that holds title, not necessarily you, me, who work for the corporation or the governmental agency. So that's how person is used here. Where we see it further down, we can certainly grab that definition of person, and we can make clear that a person employed by the or an individual employed by the person, which I think we have used in other places. So we can certainly add that clarification that an individual employed by, which is similar to that section about the inspections and making sure somebody employed by the owner is a representative. So we can clarify that.
Okay, thanks. Move to 6812 on page 3.
Okay.
I know this is not a change, but I'm wondering if this is a little outdated. Project registrations under number B, project registration forms submitted to a registered accessibility specialist by an owner must be uploaded in tabs. Seems to me that we can't upload anything into tabs until the project is registered. So I'm not sure how uploading a project registration form makes sense.
Got it.
Marcia Godo, I'll take that one. So that we left in there because we have had a couple of projects that get registered by a RAS, and they have provided what appears to be inaccurate information, particularly for the owner or an agent or a designer, just kind of filled in. And so in order to correct some of those, say it got auto-filled by their computer, we can go back and look at that registration form and say, okay, they accidentally autofilled this particular contact information. Let's update it based off of that registration form.
Okay, so if the RAS is the one who registers the project, you want to see the project registration form submitted by
Yes,
them.
sir.
Thank you. Trying to keep my eyes out for any other hands being raised. Anybody want to?
Kathy Riley here.
Sorry, Kathy.
Hi. Marsha, with that, extend, or can it possibly extend to architects who fill out the online registration? Because I have seen where the similar thing has happened where their computer from what I'm looking at, I could be absolutely wrong, but where their computer has also auto-filled like their personal, let's say, zip code rather than the zip code of the project.
Right. Marcia Godo here. So yeah, I would love to be able to put that in, but unfortunately we don't license architects or designer professionals. And so since I don't have a design professional section in this rules, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. So then we'll have to go back through, the owner would have to okay that change. And then the registered accessibility specialist will have to go make the change with that letter in hand from the owner, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. That's okay. That's fine.
Can we go to 6820, please,
yes.
on page? And Jessica, I guess at this point I want to clarify something. When we make a motion, we've been talking about potentially staff going back through and cleaning up a few things, the typos and things like that.
Right.
That doesn't need to be part of the motion, right?
No, so yeah, so we've captured multiple things, and so for me to be able to say exactly how I'm going to do the clarification, where I'm going to be putting that, I can't tell you exactly right now, but I do know the change that you have requested in 681021, for example. And so all of the things that we have discussed where a change would be required, you know, we can certainly go forward with those. We can mention the sections. So for example, 6850, 6851, 6852, but we've captured all of these. So when the motion is made, it can be, okay, we would like to propose these for adoption with the changes as discussed by the board, by the committee.
Okay, I was hoping we'd be able to do that. Thank you.
Yes.
Otherwise, I want to start taking better notes.
Yes, I've got them.
Okay, so on page 6, M, 4M, and N.
All right. Here we go.
So my understanding is that the way this has worked for like an apartment project is if there was an amenity space, a common meeting space that was used by residents with their guests, it was exempt. But if it was used by anybody outside, then it was not exempt and would have to comply with TAS. And this seems to me to be a little different from that because the term open to the general public has been mentioned, and maybe I'm just misreading this. So my question is, does this mean that if a clubhouse at an apartment complex is rented to a non-resident, but only for private events such as a family reunion, is not open to the general public, does the space then not have to comply with TAS? Or are you saying if it's used by any member of the general public can use it? How is that being defined? Is that clear?
And I'll let Marcia, no, that's definitely clear. I'll let Marcia expand on that. I think we talk about residential amenity space. I think you also need to think of it as your community HOA pool, more so than just your local, your apartment space. Think of it also as your HOA pool, for example, where you would have non-residents that may be renting it out.
Right.
Marcia Godo. So both M and N were two items where we felt they were added because they were items that we felt were getting, I hate to say abused, but they were not clear enough on what we wanted in our rules. So we added them to try and, yes, be more clear. So many people were using the residential exception and not providing tax compliance when they did rent it out. So the intent for M itself was to be for, yes, those pools, the clubhouses, those things that are rented out to anyone outside of the residential facility. So the apartment complex, it could be rented to anybody, even if it is for, like you said, a family reunion, a closed event. It is supposed to be, because they rented it out beyond the residential living units, or it was beyond their guests. Then yeah, that was the intent for M. Sorry, I got lost in my words.
No, it's fine. So, so maybe the issue is that open to the general public is after 4 activities. That appears to limit this to activities that are open to the general public, which I don't think is the intent.
Okay.
So I suggest that you think about wordsmithing that just a little bit, so it's clear that if it could be used by could be rented to the general public, even for private activities.
Okay.
They'll have to.
I see. Got that. Yes, we can make that change.
And N is near and dear to my heart because I used to work for Travis County in subdivision development, and I was one of the ones that went out and looked at the streets, sidewalks to see if the county was willing to accept them for maintenance. And my understanding of this, at least at the time, unless the law has changed, is that when a subdivision is platted, the dedicated to the public generally, and that what the county or city would do is, after some period of time, and Travis County would wait for a year after the warranty period expired to make sure that the streets don't fall apart, then they would set the streets for maintenance and for traffic control. So it wasn't really an ownership transfer. So I'm wondering if this is legally what we want to say, what reflecting was actually happening, is that the idea that the right-of-way title is being, underlying title is being transferred from the owner to the local jurisdiction, local government. And maybe that's the case, and we just didn't do it that way. Travis County in terms of how we worded it. But that was my concern. That it didn't seem to me that ownership is being transferred.
Do you have suggested language for that section?
I could come up with something. Sure. Off the top of my head, I kind of want to ask the question first to the attorneys, because I'm not an attorney, and I have been known to misunderstand legal issues that I've dealt with for years. So I don't want to presume that I'm understanding it correctly.
Okay. We'll address that section.
We'll have a further conversation about that. And moving down to A, under 6821, the same page. So this is about registration, so I get that. But it raised the question in my mind is, are we really spelling out anywhere that projects under 50,000 have to comply? We talk about them not having to be registered, and we allow them to be submitted. But is there anywhere where we spell out that if it's less than 50,000, it may not have to be registered, but it does still have to comply with that? I just didn't find it.
Marcia Godo again. It is not spelled out anywhere in the rules where it specifically says if you're under 50,000, you have to still comply. The intent is that if you're on the list under 6820, those have to comply regardless of cost. And then registration is the additional under 6821. That's the intent.
Well, I see this come up a lot. I had the question asked quite a bit on smaller projects. They just assume, and they're surprised when I tell them that it has to comply with tax. Oh no, we're under $50,000.
Okay.
Just a thought.
We can clarify.
Can we move please to 68.30 on page 8, number 5, new language about places of primary residence. So I completely get what this is for Airbnbs and even a small senior living facility that are in homes in which the proprietor lives. But this also allows an exemption for, say, a licensed assisted living facility. Because if it has 4 or more residents, and often the owner does live there to provide the care for the residents, that's typically the case, it has to be licensed by the state, and yet it would not have to comply with TAPS. Is that our intent? Or if it's a licensed assisted living, do we think it should have to comply with TAPS regardless?
So this actually came from 6820, and it was moved over here because it was already in there under places of residence. So we just moved it to clean it up to say, okay, it was kind of tied up in there with hotels and everything else. So we moved it there. It was already in there. I don't think that that was the intent at all, but we can add clarifying language as far as that to make sure that those are not covered.
Yeah, I think that's the intent, and I think we need to say that, because this looks like, and even if it's been there, I didn't realize it was. This
Marcia Goto, yes, that's exactly why we moved it. It's because nobody knew it was there. What if we put an establishment or place of transient lodging? Would that solve your concern?
I was, maybe, yeah. The other, suggestion I had was maybe that you just say the exemption does not apply to buildings and facilities that are required to be licensed by the state. Whichever one you think is clear and makes more sense legally. It's easier for enforcement to deal with.
Okay.
Uh, 6841, please.
Hold on, John, before you go on, I want a clarification, please. This is related to the exception that you were talking about, and specifically, is the Elimination of Architectural Barriers Act intended to be applied to group homes? I notice in the definition of facilities that are subject, there's a note, subpart K, this is on page 6, refers to social service centers, including a senior citizen center, homeless shelter, food bank, or adoption agency. Group homes, are you familiar with what they are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, it is a facility that takes care of people with physical or developmental disabilities in small groups, typically in a single family residence that's been converted to a group home. Okay, so here you are talking about small groups of people, typically in that 5 range. So specifically, the question is this intended to apply to group homes?
Marcia Goto, yes, that is a section in TAS. It's residential dwelling units in TAS is referring to social service establishments like group homes. So yes, they are subject.
Okay.
Right, and number 5 is not intended for those.
Correct.
This is solely for those Airbnbs and vacation rental type facilities.
Right. Yeah, that and what are they called?
Bed and breakfast.
Bed and breakfast.
Bed and
Thank you.
breakfast, correct.
So, thank you, Ron. That comment suggests to me then that the language you suggested about lodging, rental lodging is better than licensed by the state, because group homes, if they're small enough, may not be licensed by the state. Is that correct, Ron? You may not. Ron, did you hear me? You're muted.
Sorry. If K refers to group homes, then 6830 subpart 5 does not necessarily need to refer to it. And that's now, Marcia, I'm going to defer to you. Okay. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, I agree with Ron. We'll let staff come up with the best language for that. You're better at that than we are.
We'll Marcia Goto, sorry. We'll look at it and we'll find the best way so that it does 5 does not include group homes and it does not include the assisted living facilities.
Okay.
We'll
yeah, at the same time, let's revisit K and make certain that somewhere in that section that it does refer to group homes.
Kathy Riley here. Ron, can just social service facilities cover the group homes?
That's what I was thinking as well, is that is what it's referring to.
Well, then K should be okay when it says a social service center, including maybe not limited to a senior citizen center, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Or add group home to that listing.
Or yeah, specifically
We
add
can
it.
add that. Yeah, we can certainly add that. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure,
Yes, ma'am.
absolutely.
Hey, it's Rob Roy Parnell here. If I could just kind of on that same clarification issue, since there does seem to be quite a bit of conversation, would it be appropriate to look at this and be a little more explicit in definitions as to the inclusion of what defines what it was, a social center or group home or whatever it is? Would it be a good opportunity to have a definition in the definition sections of tasks to put that as a point of clarification?
This is Jessica Escobar. We can certainly look at that in tasks. I think we don't want to be overly prescriptive in definitions so that you have broad latitude, so that if you have a group home that maybe doesn't exactly fit into that, but it generally fits into that definition, we don't want to exclude it, pending another rule change. But that's certainly something we can look at. The fact that we have social service center and then we have the including gives you the ability to fit in some of those other definitions. If you all feel that there needs to be a definition, we can do that. But I just would hesitate to put or try to form a definition for group home and then miss something. And then we've excluded them now from being subject to. That's my only concern.
So under 233 residential facilities, it does list group homes, halfway houses, shelters, and similar social service establishments. That's under 233.1, so it's already in TAS.
We can use that verbiage from TAS. We'll refer to that.
Thanks, Marcia. Okay, let's look at
Thank you.
6841 on page 10, please. Under C, owner or owner's designated agent is required to be physically on site. I think that was intended to be parallel with the language in 6852B. So
correct. That was an oversight, yes, to grab both of those.
And moving down to E, under designated agent.
Okay.
Next page. I just want to make sure this seems to apply to me, that a form must be submitted for each project that is registered, and that you have to designate an agent on every project, which I know is not the intent.
No, that was not the intent. The intent was to say when an agent is designated, that same, like for example, if you're designating an agent and they work on all your projects, that person must be designated for each project. So it can't be assumed because you have the same person, they're working on all the projects. So we can certainly clarify that to say, we can certainly clarify that language. You do not have to designate an agent by any means, but we can certainly clarify that if somebody is working on more than one project, they have to submit the form for each project.
Right. Thank you. 68.50.
Okay.
My only, this is just a little confusing to me, because the plans are allowed to be submitted in electronic format, and then we have under D a requirement that says the construction documents provided to the department become the property of the department and will not be returned, which doesn't really apply to electronic format, it seems to me. me. So then the question is, does the department allow printed plans to even be submitted to them anymore? I thought you no longer accepted those.
Marcia?
Just outdated.
Marcia Godo. So there are very few TDLR registered projects where they get mailed into us, and that includes mailed plans. We also get variances mailed in with mailed plans because we're not completely digital yet, and then TDLR will scan them in. So we've had a couple of times where architects have mailed them in and then said, can I have them back? And so we have to kind of leave that one in there.
Okay, thank you. 68.60 on page 14.
Okay.
So there are no changes to this. I thought I had been told that TDLR no longer issues a notice of substantial completion. Was that incorrect?
Marcia Godo again. So every project that is closed, approved in our system gets a letter. And so even renovation or new construction, if an owner requests a certificate or a notice of substantial compliance certificate for new construction projects, then we do issue those certificates. There are a couple of them sent every month.
Okay, thank you. 68.74, continuing education. This is really, really well done. Thank you, by the way. Just really like what you've done with this. For one thing, I want to scroll down to number 8 and suggest that perhaps only up to 1 hour could be allowed for life safety codes related to egress.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I would want to take a 4-hour course and use the horizontal exits, smoke-proof enclosures, and be able to claim that for my accessibility.
Okay.
Continued education. And I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to respond to this, because this is a pretty big change here, and see if there's anybody on the advisory committee that has any concerns about the two main features. Is number one, changing it 4 hours, and number two, allowing courses that are not, the department, I suppose, will no longer be certifying courses, right? That would happen. This is approved. Not sure who I'm asking that question of, maybe Marcia.
Kathy Riley here. Are we therefore going on the honor system on this one?
Right. So self-certifying means that you would, Jessica Escobar, self-certifying means that you would be submitting a check saying, I have done those. If we come out and do an inspection of your records and we find that you, during an audit, you don't have those records, then it would be a violation.
Kathy Riley here again. So it's not something where you automatically have to show proof of completing?
Exactly, right.
Okay.
Some of our other programs have that.
Okay. Just making sure I am clear about that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Michael,
Go ahead.
here. John, so you're saying that on number 8, you're saying you're wanting to limit that to just an hour on the egress? Did you hear that, John?
You're breaking up just a little bit, but yeah, my suggestion is that the entire 4 hours could not be in life related to egress.
The only issue I have with that is I'm real big into the codes and the BPIs that the TDLR already attends and trainings that are done by the Building Officials Association of Texas. They have a whole class that is related to egress, and it's almost flat. Then you're saying Well, you can only use an hour of that 8-hour class that you're sitting in to do that. Or this is a pretty building world side of it also. Just my 2 thoughts.
So you broke up, but you triggered in my mind something that's a very valid point, which is if you had all 4 hours in the chapter of the IBC, for example, on accessible means of egress, then that would be perfectly acceptable. I was really thinking of egress that is not directly related to accessibility, like horizontal exits, smoke-proof enclosures, and things like that. So I kind of take back my comment to the extent that there are building and life safety codes where they address with, maybe another one needs to be added is going to be building code provisions that are specific to accessible means of egress. Could be the entire 4 hours, but life safety codes related, or building and life safety codes related to egress, not specifically related to life safety code. I don't know. I'm not sure how you would put that. I mean, that's related to emergency accessible means of egress. I'm not sure how you'd word that. But,
Okay.
that's maybe one to think about.
Got a suggestion here, John. Ron Menard here. If we broke that down into life safety codes related to accessibility and accessible egress, and then life safety codes related to other topics, and then have that limited to 1 hour.
Yeah, that's a potential approach. Previously, the rules allowed life safety codes as one of your, as part of the 4 hours that are not courses that are certified by the department. And my thought was that a lot of life safety code stuff deals with things other than egress. They deal specifically with fire as opposed to emergency accessible means of egress. So I had made a comment earlier to staff that maybe we limit the life safety codes to things related to egress, where that's important to understand even if it's not part of accessible means of egress, because then you kind of know what's accessible and what isn't and what that means. This is not really clear how best to do this, and maybe I think at this point the thing to do is to, unless somebody has specific language that is really clear to everybody that it's a great idea, maybe we'd let staff take the comments we've made today and come back and rethink that and do their best to worsen it another day.
And this is certainly a starting off point, like we discussed earlier. And so we can bring these to you, we can publish these with the proposed changes and see what the comments are. And we can also see what you all think about them. And then at that second meeting, if you all decide, if that doesn't work for us, we can make that change before we go to adoption. So we're not bound by whatever we come out with after this meeting.
And we will receive, Mary Winston, we will receive other comments from public. After this is posted, we'll have a bunch of suggestions we think come in, public comment, and Jessica will take those into account. And then everything will come back to this committee again.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. That's a great reminder. Okay, so the last one I have is 6876. The bottom of page 18, the top of page 19, number C3.
Okay.
So when we were talking about consulting, not design, and so I don't see the conflict of interest here. I routinely review projects for compliance with the Life Safety Code, compliance with building codes, compliance with fair housing, compliance with NCA 117.1, and that's not task, but it is consulting. And if I did that, I could not be the RAS. And that just doesn't make sense to me. So, curious as to what staff's thought was in writing this.
Marcia Godo. So the thought is that if you have any kind of skin in the game to go and make sure that like you're consulting about what is life safety issues, that you doing the RAS work would not overshadow that. So the egress and the fire codes and things like that, you wouldn't just approve that because you were on the life safety part of that design or consulting. That was the logic behind that.
Okay, so I guess my response to that is that when I review things, I am not, and this is, you're right, this would be a conflict of interest. I'm not in the approval chain of events here. At no point does somebody come to me and say, do you approve this? Because my response to that is, no, I don't, I can't. I have nothing to do with that. This is just what the code says. This is how I think the code should be interpreted, and what you've done here does not appear to comply. And here's some options for how it might comply, but I'm not designing it. You've got to make that decision. And I have no authority to approve or disapprove anything, which is really what the RAS is doing to a large extent, except that the RAS has authority to disapprove. So, I mean, I think if you limited that to somebody who's completely outside of the decision-making process, not part of the design team, and I argue with people, they want me to be on the design team. I'm like, I'm not. I'm separate. I'm an independent third party. I work for the VA as an independent third party. And even though I'm paid by the architect, because that's the way they work it, they require that I be independent third party working for them. So that's the relationship you have to make that work. But I think this is just too broad when you say consulting. Then you're cutting out people who have no skin in the game, as you say, from providing any of those services.
So Jessica Escobar, so Mr. Ricard, do you feel, so would providing a clarification about being involved in the decision-making process work, or do you feel that something in 1 or 2 would cover this scenario now that you understand why it was included in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think 1 and 2 are really good. If there's any interest that might reasonably appear to influence the consultant's judgment in connection, then that's the conflict of interest that has to be avoided. And I'm very comfortable that when I'm writing a report that says, here's what the Life Safety Code requires, here's how I think HHSD will enforce it, here are other ways it's been looked at, here are some other options. There is no interest in that would affect my judgment regarding accessibility at all. It's just not related.
Okay.
And the financial interest is important because there can't be any pressure on me now. I'm just being asked to be independent. And we also do a lot of consulting with fair housing and ANCA 117.1, which is not TAS, but it's accessibility. So it's a very similar thing. As long as they can't put any financial pressure on me to skew my recommendations one way or my comments one way or the other, I think that's great. Okay, I don't have any more comments. Does anybody else? All right, hearing none, I think we're ready for a motion.
One hand.
Oh, who is that, please? Please speak up.
Hi, this is Jyoti Naik. I have a question about the training part, CEU. Can we use any time spent in this meeting as part of the training time?
No, this
That's a
would
great,
not be, that is a good question. This would not be considered eligible. This is not training. We would not consider this training. The trainings that Marcia conducts would be something different, but our discussions would not be considered continuing education.
Can
so
it be
Jody,
considered? Because other licenses I have, they do allow participating in volunteering in these kind of events to be counted.
Ms. Mag, typically, no, we don't include that as training because it's not offered as a full training for everyone who, so watching it isn't considered a training. It's open to the public. And I can definitely get our education and examination director or some of his staff to speak more to it, but it's not offered overall as a training. It is learning. It's not quite established. You are a decision maker in this part of it, but attending wouldn't offer everyone, or I should say being a member wouldn't offer the ability to have a training for like the whole body of licensees. And watching our advisory board meetings isn't considered a training, but I can get you further clarification on that or consideration. I'll make sure that he watches this and we can get you some more answers.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you, Mary. I think engineering, I know, allows participation in code writing committees to count towards continuing education, because when you're writing codes, you're talking about all the underlying requirements of them, and it's a great educational experience. And engineering also allows teaching the course to count as your continuing education, because when you prepare a course, obviously you have to get really knowledgeable of the details of it, preparation for questions. I don't think architecture does, but that might be something worth considering, particularly serving on a committee such as this, where we learn a lot by going through what's being considered and why, and all these details that get missed, we're picking up because they're being brought up before this type of environment. So.
And on that note, Mr. Ricard, work groups are given credit for CE. Actually, thank you, Michael, for letting me know that. But we have not given training for actual advisory boards. So, but they have heard your request, so we will look into it for you.
Okay, if we don't have any other comments, I think we're ready for a motion. I think the motion, Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, would be something in the order of authorizing to move this forward with the comments and discussion that has been made in the last hour or so.
Yes, sir, Jessica. I think the motion would be propose the rules as amended with the suggested changes by the committee.
That's a great motion. Do I hear a motion that repeats that? Or a motion of your own making?
I make a motion that we accept the proposed rules with the amendments that were discussed in this meeting by the advisory board.
Mike Olson,
Thank you,
I'll
Ron.
second that motion.
And second by Michael Olson. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Delia, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Ron Renard,
Aye.
Rob Roy Parnell,
Everyone's cutting out.
Michael
Trying to-
McDonald. I'm sorry, Mr. Parnell, what was your answer?
It was cutting out, so I didn't hear the
So,
question.
so Rob Roy, did you hear the motion?
I did hear the motion, yes.
Okay. We're taking a roll in the vote now.
Okay, yes.
Michael McDonald, Joy D. Knight,
Aye.
Kathy Ann Riley,
Yes.
Michael T. Olson,
Aye.
John Ricard, presiding officer.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, item H on the agenda, recommendations for agenda items for next committee meeting. Do any committee members have any thoughts or recommendations for agenda items for the next meeting?
Well, Mr. Ricard, Mary Winston, we will want to hold off on that meeting until we can get this posted for 30 days on the Texas Register. And that's going to be sort of top priority for going over any comments we receive from the public and taking another look at the set of rules. So if anyone has anything else, we definitely can add that to the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not hearing any specific suggestions from the committee members, so item I on the agenda is discuss date, time, and location of the next committee meeting, and Delia will be polling the committee for a future committee meeting at some point when they are ready to pick a date. That will give some options. And if there is no other comments, I'll declare the meeting adjourned at 11:50 a.m. Thank you very much, everybody.